How does it work?
It seems very mysterious, but the answer is actually pretty simple. The curved inner chambers of the shell are just bouncing back into your ear. The noises that are around you all the time but that you don't usually notice. The louder it is around you if you're near a construction site or at a party. For example, the louder the ocean sound in the shell will be. If you don't have a conch shell handy to test this out, don't worry. You can use a cup or even your curved hand to demonstrate. Shells of different sizes and shapes will reflect noises in varying ways. And so will different kinds of cups. Try holding a large plastic cup over your ear, pull it back a bit and see how the noise changes. Then try it with a coffee cup to see if it's different.
Why do yellowjacket wasps bother picnickers?
Yellowjacket wasps only appear at picnics in the late summer and fall, when there is less work for them to do in their colonies. The nectar-producing flowers that they usually feed on are almost gone at that time of year, so they settle for sweet things like soda and other picnic food.
Why do we have daylight saving time?
Daylight saving time, DST, came about as a way to adjust clocks during the summer months, when days are longer, to make better use of the daylight hours. Countries began making such clock adjustments during World War I. 1914 to 1918, to save on the fuel needed for artificial light. If people could adjust their clocks so that it got dark at 9 p.m. instead of 8 p.m., then they could turn their lights on 1 hour later, or not at all if they simply went to bed when it got dark. These energy savings have continued today since it gets dark later in the evening. People don't turn on lights until later in the day. And in the summer, the sun rises very early and is usually up when people awake, reducing the need to turn on lights first thing in the morning. In the fall, as the days begin to get shorter, we go back to standard time, which means that the sun sets and rises at an earlier time of day. As the days get shorter, the amount of time between sunrise and sunset shrinks, so that in the heart of winter daylight arrives later in the day and departs earlier than in the spring and summer months. In the United States, daylight saving time, as decided by Congress, begins at 2 a.m. on the first Sunday in April and ends at 2 a.m. on the last Sunday in October, when DST begins. People move their clocks forward 1 hour. When it ends in October, clocks are moved back 1 hour. If you have trouble remembering which direction the clocks should go at which time of year, just think of the expression spring forward, fall back. Many other countries in the world observe some form of daylight saving time, though the exact starting and ending dates differ.
Do people die when struck by lightning?
Most people struck by lightning do not die. If lightning, which is about the width of a pencil, does not pass through a person's heart, brain, or spinal cord, interrupting or damaging the electrical impulse cells that run them, then that person usually survives. While the electrical discharge of a lightning bolt is powerful and hot, up to 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit, or 30,000 degrees Celsius, it is fortunately incredibly quick. Survivors often have burn marks on their skin and clothes, especially where the lightning has entered and left their bodies. While it's possible to survive a lightning strike, it is best to follow safety precautions to avoid testing that possibility. When a thunderstorm approaches, go inside a building or closed car or truck. The vehicle's metal body will offer a safe path for lightning's electrical current to flow to the ground. The exterior of a building will do the same. One thing to remember when you are in a building, however, is to stay off a cord phone and avoid using plumbing fixtures or electrical appliances until the storm passes. Lightning can move through the ground for quite a distance from the place where it strikes, and it may on rare occasions travel along water, electrical, or phone lines into your home. If a thunderstorm approaches so quickly that you can't find shelter, you can still take steps to protect yourself outdoors. Remember that lightning always takes the shortest route to Earth, so avoid being near tall things. You may feel tempted to stand under a tall tree for protection from the rain. But remember that a tree may be struck by lightning. Don't stand on a hilltop, instead, try to find the lowest ground you can, like a ditch or a valley, and crouch there, trying to make yourself as small as possible. Avoid bodies of water, swimming pools, lakes, or even puddles. And metal objects. Both water and metal conduct electricity well, and if lightning struck them, the electrical current would travel through to everything touching the water or metal.
What are the greenhouse effect and global warming?
A greenhouse is a glass structure built for plants. The glass walls and ceiling allow the light from the sun to enter but prevent the sun's heat from leaving, providing the kind of warm climate greenhouse plants need. Certain gases in the atmosphere act in much the same way as the glass panels of the greenhouse, letting sunlight shine through to the ground and trapping the heat produced by that light. The greenhouse effect happens naturally, without human interference. But by introducing large amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, human beings have turned a natural occurrence into a potential problem. With the industrialization of the 1800s and 1900s, the amount of greenhouse gases increased tremendously. Some greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide, are produced by burning such fuels as coal, natural gas, and oil. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased by about 25% in the last 200 years. Plants absorb some carbon dioxide, but much of it rises to the atmosphere, contributing to the greenhouse effect. Other gases that contribute to the greenhouse effect are ozone and methane. If too much heat is trapped in the atmosphere, it may eventually make Earth's climate warmer. This effect, known as global warming, may seem harmless enough. And if you live in a place with harsh winters, it might even seem like a good thing. But the delicate balance of life on Earth can be severely disrupted by a change in the planet's climate. If the temperature of Earth's surface increased enough, it could melt the polar ice caps. The massive, thick ice formations at the North and South Poles, raising the level of the oceans and possibly flooding coastal areas. Climate changes can also affect weather patterns, changing rainfall and snowfall amounts and making storms more severe, and the lives of plants and animals.
What makes blood red?
Blood contains a protein called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, which contains iron, is found in red blood cells and is the ingredient that makes blood red. Hemoglobin transports oxygen from the lungs to wherever it's needed throughout your body. You've probably noticed that sometimes blood is bright red, while other times it is dark red. The difference in color comes from the changing amounts of oxygen in the blood. Arteries, a type of blood vessel, carry blood away from the lungs and heart to the rest of your body. That blood is rich in oxygen, which joins with hemoglobin to give the blood its bright red color. Tiny blood vessels called capillaries, which have narrow walls through which tiny substances can pass, distribute oxygen and nutrients to all of your body's cells. One of the waste products produced by your body's cells is the gas carbon dioxide, which enters your bloodstream by slipping through the capillary walls. The capillaries take that oxygen-poor, carbon dioxide-filled blood to the veins. Another type of blood vessel, which carry the blood back to the lungs and heart. The lack of oxygen in this blood gives it a dark red, almost purplish color. When that blood reaches the lungs, the carbon dioxide in it is transferred to your lungs. When your brain receives a signal that carbon dioxide is building up in your lungs, it causes you to exhale, or breathe out, expelling all that carbon dioxide into the air. You then inhale, or breathe in, oxygen, which goes to your lungs, and the process begins again.
How do X-rays work?
X-rays are similar to visible light in that both are forms of electromagnetic energy, which travels in waves. But X-rays have much shorter wavelengths than light, so they are invisible. Just as light can pass through some things, like glass, X-rays can pass through certain materials. They can pass through your skin, muscles, and organs, for example. But not through dense things like your bones, which contain heavier atoms. When you have an X-ray taken, the waves are projected through you onto a film or plate that is coated with special chemicals. Most X-rays are stopped when they hit a bone but pass through other body parts, which appear dark on the X-ray after it is developed. Bones stand out light and clear. When organs like the stomach or intestines need to be X-rayed, the patient drinks a special liquid that stops the rays. That liquid coats the organ, and a picture can be taken. Doctors take great care to minimize the number of X-rays given to any one patient because the radiation can damage living tissue. But sometimes the ability of X-rays to destroy cells is beneficial. Many cancer patients have undergone radiation therapy in an effort to kill diseased cells in tumors.
Why do teeth fall out?
Normally, only baby teeth fall out. And they do so when permanent teeth push up from below to take their place. As the permanent teeth push up, they destroy the roots, which are buried in the gums, of baby teeth. Without roots to anchor them to the jawbone, teeth become loose and fall out. Permanent teeth can fall out, too, when disease or injury destroys their roots.
How many numbers are there?
Numbers are unlimited, or infinite, which means that you could go on counting them forever. One man, Edward Kastner, asked his young nephew, Milton Serrata, to come up with a name for the huge number he was working with, which was a 1 with 100 zeros after it. The boy called it a googol. While the googol is the largest number with a name, there are numbers much larger than googols. So big that you could never write all their zeros down during your lifetime.
Where do people live in cities?
Big cities have a lot of things to offer residents and visitors, but one thing they don't have is space. The people who live in a city can't spread out, but they can spread up. City dwellers usually make their homes in apartment buildings or condominiums that are several stories high. These allow a large number of people to be housed on a little bit of land. Some of these buildings have hundreds of residents. High-rise homes have actually been around for centuries. In ancient Rome, poor people lived in multi-story apartments. In Yemen, a country in Southwest Asia, high-rise homes made of mud bricks have been used for more than 1,000 years. Without modern building materials like steel and concrete, though, multi-story buildings can't rise very high, because they become too heavy to be supported by their foundations.
Why are there zoos?
Zoological gardens, commonly known as zoos, were created for a number of reasons. Since ancient times, people have captured wild animals for collections. For the pleasure of owning and observing them, and in order to learn more about them and their habits. Very few people can travel to the wilds of Africa and other exotic places. But by visiting a zoo they can see firsthand some of the world's huge variety of creatures. Today, most large cities have zoos. People can learn more about animals there and about how to protect the native habitats from which these creatures come. Many zoos are havens where endangered animals can live protected and where there are breeding programs that try to increase the population of such creatures to keep them from extinction. Zoos also provide homes for animals that have been injured and could no longer survive in the wild. Zoos both entertain and educate those who visit them.
Why does scratching help quiet an itch?
Scientists think that scratching gives your touch sensors a stronger feeling to focus on. And the itch is ignored, at least temporarily.
Why don't girls have penises?
In both males and females, urine exits the body through a tube called the urethra. In males, the urethra is located in the penis. A male's urethra is also the pathway through which a fluid called semen passes. Made in the male reproductive organs in the lower abdomen and scrotum, the skin sac attached to the lower abdomen behind the penis. Semen contains the sperm cells that fertilize female egg cells to create babies. Females don't have penises because they don't need them. Their shorter urethra passes through the lower abdomen, expelling urine. Female reproductive organs are all located on the inside of the body, where a baby can safely develop. During sexual intercourse, a man inserts his penis into a woman's vagina. The passageway that leads to the uterus, the structure in which babies grow. Once semen is released, a sperm cell may fertilize the single egg cell that a woman releases each month from one of two ovaries, which are connected to the uterus. If that occurs, a baby eventually develops.
What can you do to stay safe when you are outside or away from home?
Here are some basic guidelines: play with at least one other kid and in familiar places. Don't go near a car with a stranger in it, even if the person says he or she has a gift for you, or needs your help to find a lost pet, or is asking for directions. Think about it this way: if an adult really needed help, he or she would ask another adult, not a kid. Don't accept a ride home from school or anywhere from someone you don't know. Even if that person says your parents asked him or her to pick you up, and even if that person knows your name. Basically, try to avoid situations where you are alone with an adult you don't know unless it is a person your parents have arranged for you to meet with, like a doctor or a counselor. If a stranger approaches you, tell that person to please not speak to you because you don't know him or her. If the stranger continues toward you, start yelling and run away. If you need help, your best bet is to go to a public place like a store, a library, or especially a police station. Afterward, be sure to tell your parents about your experience with the stranger.
What happens when people die?
When death occurs, blood which carries oxygen to all the cells of the body has stopped circulating. This stoppage may be caused by damage to the heart, which is the muscle that pumps blood throughout the body, or by damage to the brain, which gives the signals that direct the heart to do its pumping. Other circumstances, like severe accidents, also stop blood flow. But whatever the reason, once blood stops bringing its life-giving oxygen to the body's billions of cells, the building blocks that make up the human body, the death of those cells starts to occur. When the brain, which is the body's command center, goes without oxygen for about 15 minutes, all cells there die. While machines can help our lungs breathe or our hearts pump blood, no machine can assume the complex functions of the brain. Without a brain, we cannot live. Soon after a person dies, an official document called a death certificate is filled out and later filed as a record with the local government. It includes such information as time, place, and cause of death.
How did clothing develop?
People first started wearing clothing to keep warm and dry and to protect themselves against the blazing sun, scratching plants, and attacking animals. Early men and women used animal furs as clothing, wrapping them around their waists and shoulders. But since ancient times, clothing has also been a means of expression, a way in which people have let others know more about themselves. Even in prehistoric times, people used dress to indicate which group they belonged to, their status or position within their group or tribe, and as an expression of their customs and religious beliefs. Early men and women used strings of beads or stones, feathers, and other ornaments to make themselves look special and different from one another. Early on, people found that by scraping animal hides and treating them with fats they could make them softer and more flexible. This allowed the skins to be cut, sewn, and shaped into better fitting clothing. Thin strips of leather drawn through holes in the hides kept the pieces together. Finer sewing could be done once sharp needles that could pierce the skins were developed. Starting about 50,000 years ago, these were usually carved from wood or bone. Then people began to make cloth. Cloth is material made from threads that are woven together in a crisscross pattern. About 10,000 years ago, people first made cloth out of animal hair that was spun into thread. When the short hairs of an animal were overlapped and twisted together, long strands could be made, which were then woven into fabric. People in ancient Asia used the hair of sheep, camels, and goats to make cloth. In other parts of the world people used the hairs of different animals, of mountain creatures like llamas and alpacas in South America, and of horses, buffalo, and moose in North America to make their cloth. And it could be colored by using dyes made from certain plants and even animals. In ancient Greece, for example, a rich red dye was made from the skin of the tiny Kermes worm. Ancient Egyptians were some of the first people to make cloth. Beginning around 5000 BC. Instead of using animal hair, the Egyptians wove together the long fibers of flax plants to make lightweight linen, perfect for their desert climate. Historians think that they got the idea for weaving from fishermen, who made nets by tying threads together in a special way with weights attached to their ends to keep them tight, straight, and free from tangling. As centuries passed, clothing continued to be used to express the identity and status of its wearer. The clothes of farmers and tradespeople like blacksmiths and carpenters, for example, remained simple and sturdy. Meant to last a long time, their clothing styles were also loose, making them easy to work in. But wealthy people could afford fine fabrics from faraway places. And they had the luxury of thinking about the way their outfits were shaped and decorated. They could show their higher social status by wearing clothing styles that were sometimes wildly impractical, things that would never be worn by someone who performed manual labor for a living. In the 14th century, for instance, long pointed shoes were in fashion. Some with 20-inch toes that had to be stuffed with moss to keep their shape. A farmer certainly couldn't work in his fields in shoes like that. Immense hanging sleeves and corsets that pinched waists in to make them smaller worn by both men and women are other examples of impractical and uncomfortable fashions.
Which country has the fewest people?
Once again, Vatican City wins a smallest award, in addition to being the smallest in area. Vatican City also, not surprisingly, has the smallest population, about 850 people. The country with the second smallest population is Tuvalu, formerly called Ellis Islands. Home to fewer than 10,000 people, Tuvalu consists of a string of 9 coral atolls, which are like donut-shaped islands, rings of coral with lagoons in the center. Located in a region in the South Pacific called Polynesia.
What is static electricity?
All matter is made of tiny particles called atoms. Inside an atom are even tinier particles. Electrons that move in orbit around a center, or nucleus, made of neutrons and protons. An electron has a negative electric charge and a proton has a positive one. Usually an atom has the same number of each, which keeps the atom neutral or unchanged arged. But sometimes electrons leave their orbit, attracted to other atoms that lack an electron and are positively charged. The movement or flow of electrons from one atom to another produces the form of energy called electricity. When electrons are moved by a force through a conductor like a wire, the flow of energy they create is known as current electricity. The work that this form of electricity does can be seen when we turn on a light bulb or watch a television show. Static electricity is a form of electricity that does not flow, it is electricity at rest. Objects carry positive electric charges when some of their atoms have fewer electrons than they should. And they carry negative electric charges when some of the atoms have more electrons than they should. An easy way to produce static electricity is to rub two objects, made of certain materials, together. This transfers electrons from one item to another, giving each a positive or negative charge. Positively and negatively charged objects are attracted to each other like magnets because each wants to shed or acquire electrons. When static electricity becomes powerful enough, so many electrons jump from one thing to another that they cause a visible electric spark, which you will feel as a little shock if one of the things the electrons jump to is you. Loose electrons can attach to atoms in the surface of your skin. Lightning, in fact, is really just a giant spark that results when static electricity builds up in a cloud during a thunderstorm.
Why does a skunk stink?
These furry black and white animals have a powerful secret weapon. If they feel frightened or threatened by the approach of another animal, they will first give off warning signals, like stamping their feet and, in some types, doing handstands on their front feet. If these warnings don't work, the skunk will spray the attacker with a horrible smelling oily liquid produced in glands near its anus. A skunk can shoot this liquid up to 12 feet, 3.6 meters. And its powerful odor can be detected more than a mile away. The foul smell of this liquid can be very difficult to remove from the fur of a cat or dog that has been sprayed. Pet stores sell cleaners especially designed for this problem. Bathing the pet in such products as tomato juice or diluted vinegar can also be effective.
If plants make their own food, why do some eat insects?
Carnivorous, or meat-eating, plants do make their own food through photosynthesis. But they also capture small prey, most frequently insects, for the minerals that they provide. usually carnivorous plants, like Venus flytraps. Grow in swamps and marshes where the minerals that plants need for growth, especially nitrogen, are in short supply. Minerals from the bodies of insects caught in their leaves allow carnivorous plants to grow in these otherwise unsuitable places. Carnivorous plants usually attract insects with nectar or with a pleasing smell or color. Many have sticky leaves or slippery pouches that trap insects once they land there. The Venus flytrap has pairs of jaw-like leaves that snap shut. When attached trigger hairs are disturbed by a visiting insect. Once insects are trapped, carnivorous plants produce spe chemicals that digest them. Scientists have identified nearly 500 species of carnivorous plants.
How did my life begin?
All living things are made up of cells. They are so small that you need a microscope to see them. Your body contains trillions and trillions of cells. Each part of your body is made up of different kinds of cells. Bone cells, brain cells, blood cells, and more. Each person begins life as a single fertilized cell. This single cell contains all the information needed for a new human being to grow and live. The information-coded chemical instructions known as genes is found on 23 pairs of chromosomes in the nucleus, or control center, of the cell. That special fertilized cell began with a single egg cell from your mother. Each month a woman releases a mature, or ripe, egg cell from reproductive organs called ovaries. This egg contains half the genes needed to create a new life. A man produces millions of sperm cells in reproductive organs called testes. Each sperm cell contains half the genes needed to create a new life. When a sperm cell from your father joined with and fertilized the released egg cell inside your mother's body, the cell that would become you was complete. It had all the coded instructions it needed to begin dividing and growing into a baby. Within a few hours, the fertilized cell that was you split into two complete cells, each with a full set of genes inside. Before long the cells divided again. After 5 or 6 days a ball of hundreds of cells existed. The size of the head of a pin, this ball of cells attached to the lining of your mother's uterus, or womb, the reproductive organ in which babies grow. There, in the nourishing lining of the uterus, the cells continued to multiply. Gradually the cells began to specialize, turning into nerve cells, muscle cells, and so on. A tiny baby began to take shape. As you grew, you received nutrients and oxygen from your mother's blood through a special tube that was attached to your abdomen called the umbilical cord. After 40 weeks, between 9 and 10 months, all of your organs and body systems were developed enough to work on their own, and you were ready to enter the world. Then you made your grand entrance and were born.
Why do little kids ride tricycles instead of bikes?
The triangular shape of a tricycle, with its three wheels spread apart, is much more stable than a regular bicycle, which balances on two aligned wheels. The tri 3 and by 2 before cycle refers to the number of wheels each vehicle has. Tricycles suit young children well, with larger heads and undeveloped muscles. Little ones lack the coordination and balance needed to ride regular bikes. But as soon as they can learn to pedal, children can ride a tricycle, turning leg power into wheel power. A tricycle is built for stability and not for speed. Its pedals are attached to a sprocket. In the center of its large front wheel, which moves around once for each completed pedal turn. So the larger the front wheel of a tricycle, the faster it will go, but it cannot be so large that young legs cannot reach the pedals. This design makes a tricycle unlike a regular bike, which has chain-driven sprockets that move its wheels a lot faster than its rider's feet. Tricycles are also easier for little ones to steer and turn because they are pulled forward by the movement of their front wheels. Regular bikes are powered by their rear wheels.
Why do people wear uniforms?
Some jobs require special clothing or uniforms. Sometimes these special clothes are meant to protect workers or the people they work with. An emergency room doctor, for instance, may wear special clothes to protect herself from blood and infectious agents as well as to protect patients from the germs and impurities that may be present on ordinary clothing. Most often, though, special clothes or uniforms are worn so that workers can be easily recognized by other people. Occupations that require uniforms are frequently service jobs, where workers help or perform services for other people. Workers in stores and restaurants frequently wear uniforms so that customers know who to ask for help or service. Uniforms help police officers do their jobs better, because people recognize them and go to them for help or give them the cooperation they need to maintain the law. On the battlefield, soldiers wear uniforms to identify which country they are from, signaling whether they are friends or enemies.
What are barns used for?
Today, the huge, airy farm structures we know as barns are used mostly to store modern farm machinery and house farm animals. But before modern farming, they had a greater number of important uses. Before the invention of threshing machines, which separate cereal grains like wheat from their stalks, the grain harvest had to be stored in barns, where it would await threshing or pounding by hand during winter months. The structures had to be large and drafty for the process of winnowing. which separated straw dust from the grains after threshing. Before farmers began to raise special crops to feed their livestock during the winter. They used hay, which is dried grass, grown wild or taken from the stalks of cereal crops. Huge amounts enough to last several months had to be stored away. Hay was usually kept in barn lofts located above the main floor, where farm animals spent the winter. This high storage place allowed air to circulate around the hay, keeping it from rotting. It was convenient, too, because hay could be pulled down as needed to feed the livestock. Because farmers had to store their harvest crops in barns, they wisely cut entrance holes near their roofs, inviting barn owls to make nests there. The birds would hunt the rats and mice that liked to feed on the grain.
What are ferns?
Ferns are green, leafy, spore-producing plants that can be found all over the world. Though they prefer warm, wet, shady regions. With more than 10,000 species, ferns are a large and diverse group of plants. Gardeners love them for their delicate beauty and their easy maintenance. Ferns range in size from tiny, 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, varieties to tree-like plants. The tallest of which is New Zealand's black tree fern, which can grow as tall as 65 feet, 20 meters. While the leaves of a fern, called fronds, live only about a year or two. The stems and roots of these plants can live a very long time, up to 100 years. Fern species are some of the oldest land plants. Scientists believe they have been around for more than 350 million years.
What is an iceberg?
An iceberg, a large mass of ice that floats in the sea. Usually comes from a glacier, a large mass of ice located on land, or from an ice sheet that covers a large expanse of water. Icebergs are much larger than they appear. Only about 1/10 of an iceberg shows above the water line. A fact that can cause problems for ships. A ship may steer around the visible part of an iceberg only to collide with the wide base hidden beneath the water's surface. The Titanic, a luxury ocean liner that set sail across the North Atlantic in 1912, is perhaps the most famous ship to crash into an iceberg and sink, resulting in the deaths of more than 1,500 of its passengers. Modern sonar, sound wave, and radar, radio wave equipment used during regular sea and air patrols have greatly reduced the danger of icebergs for ships today. The largest icebergs can be found in the Antarctic Ocean, near the South Pole. Some large icebergs have been known to reach heights of 328 feet, 100 meters above the water's surface, and one of the largest icebergs ever found was thought to be 170 miles. 274 kilometers, long and 25 miles, 40 kilometers, wide. The area of that iceberg nearly equals that of the state of Connecticut.
How do rockets blast off?
A rocket has a simple heat engine. It uses quick-burning fuels, known as propellants. In a combustion chamber, which has an open end at the bottom, the hot gases produced from the burning fuel expand and push in all directions. But they can escape only at the open end, and they do so with great speed and force. The difference in pressure between the closed front and open back of the chamber pushes the rocket forward. The size of a rocket blastoff depends on the amount of gas it produces and the speed at which it is released. Weapons like large missiles and spaceships use rocket engines to power them. The Chinese are believed to have used the first rocket type. Weapons pieces of bamboo filled with gunpowder about 1,000 years ago. Most engines require oxygen, supplied by air, to burn the fuels that power them. Rocket engines, however, need to be able to operate in airless outer space. So they can't rely on oxygen normally found in the air. Rocket fuel is usually a mixture that includes oxygen in liquid form.
Why do raccoons wash their food before they eat?
Raccoons have small, slender feet that they use to catch and hold onto their food. Their front feet resemble little hands, and their slender fingers can be used to remove garbage can lids and open containers and even door latches. Raccoons in the wild have often been observed swishing their food through the water of a lake or stream before eating, giving the appearance of washing their food and their hands. Raccoons kept in cages will also wet their food, dipping it into their water bowls. Scientists are not sure why raccoons exhibit this behavior. At one time they believed raccoons did not have enough saliva and needed to moisten their food before swallowing it. They now know that isn't true. Some believe raccoons might wet their food so they can mush it up a bit to make sure they've removed any sharp sticks or bones. Some have speculated that raccoons have a highly developed sense of touch, and they just like to handle their food in many different ways, putting it in water, rubbing dirt on it to figure out what it is they are eating. Sometimes raccoons have been seen washing food in dirt instead of water, which indicates that this is an instinctive behavior that may not have any purpose at all.
Why are polar bears white?
The polar bear lives in the Arctic, the region of the North Pole. Most of its environment is barren, covered year-round with ice and snow and not much else. A polar bear might eat what few plants it can find, but it feeds mostly on water animals like seals and small walruses, which share its frozen home. The polar bear's yellowish-white coat helps it blend into its snowy surroundings as it hunts its prey. After all, there is not much in the Arctic to hide behind. The fur of a polar bear is also extremely thick, allowing it to withstand polar temperatures and swim in Arctic waters, where its prey is often found. Polar bears are excellent swimmers, and their unique paws with hairy soles allow them to run very quickly over ice and snow without slipping.
Who made up our system of numbers?
From earliest times, people have had to keep track of things by counting. Historians believe that people used their fingers and toes, and then notched sticks, and finally number systems to help them count and measure things. The system of numbers that we use is known as a base 10, or decimal system because it advances in segments of 10, dec means 10. It is believed that such a system is based on finger counting. Two of the most widely used number systems, Arabic and Roman, are decimal systems. We use the Arabic system of writing numbers. Europeans learned it from Arabs, who in turn developed it from the number system used by Hindus in ancient India. But other types of decimal number systems had developed simultaneously in different parts of the world. As early as 4000 BC, Babylonians, who lived in the region that is now Iraq, wrote numbers from left to right and grouped them in tens. Ancient China, too, used a decimal number system. The numeral 0 was added to the Arabic system later. It was first used in India and China around AD 600.
What is the order of the planets in our solar system?
Starting with that closest to the Sun, the order of the planets is Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. If you have trouble keeping track of this order, remember this sentence, in which the first letter of each word is also the first letter of a planet. My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas.
Where does the sun go at night?
The sun doesn't go anywhere at night, it is Earth that moves. Earth makes a complete rotation on its axis once every 24 hours. So half of our constantly shifting planet is always turned facing the sun, experiencing day, while the other half is turned away from the sun, experiencing night.
What causes bad breath?
Poor dental care is a major cause of bad breath. Old food particles between teeth and odor-producing mouth bacteria, as well as tooth decay and infected gums, can give breath a bad smell. Brushing your teeth for at least 2 minutes a couple times a day, flossing, and even brushing your tongue, the home to lots of bacteria, can make a big difference. Sometimes bad breath can be caused by something you eat, certain foods, like onions or garlic, contain smelly substances that are absorbed into your bloodstream and then released into your lungs, causing bad breath. This smelliness will only last about a day, however, until the food leaves your body. Once in a while, bad breath can be caused by an illness in the body.
Why do people do drugs?
People may begin taking drugs out of a desire to rebel against their parents or society, or because they long to experiment with new feelings and experiences. Many people take drugs to escape from problems with family or at school. For most people, drug use begins because they like the way they feel when they are under a drug's influence, or high. Different drugs have different effects. Some are stimulants, which means they give an energy boost and create a feeling of excitement. Others are depressants, which means they slow down the body's systems and produce a calm, relaxed feeling. But no matter how a drug makes you feel, it can't get rid of the things in your life that made you feel like escaping in the first place. In fact, drug use usually makes matters worse. Drugs reduce your ability to cope with difficult emotions on your own, and they will make problems you might be having in school or with your family even worse. While many people refuse to see the harmful effects of drugs, particularly when they first begin taking them, the fact is that every drug has the potential to be harmful, and many drugs can cause death. Drug habits are expensive, and they frequently cause unpleasant personality changes in the user, which results in strained relationships with family members and friends. Many people make the mistake of believing that the more accessible legal drugs, like cigarettes and alcohol, are not as dangerous as illegal drugs. But legal drugs can have serious consequences if a person consumes very large quantities of alcohol. Even if it's his or her first time drinking, it can result in a coma or even death. Many young people wrongly believe that inhaling household chemicals produces an easy and safe high. But inhalants, by coating the lungs and preventing the absorption of oxygen, can also kill, whether it's the first time or the 50th. One danger common to nearly all drugs is that, while under the influence, your judgment is impaired and you are more likely to do something that could harm yourself or others.
Why do metal things feel cold?
When heat is transferred from one material to another, it is called conduction. Metal is a good conductor of heat, while nonmetals like wood and plastic are poor conductors. The temperature of any metal object in a room is about the same as the air that surrounds it. Your body, on the other hand, has its own internal furnace, which keeps it running at a temperature of about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius. When you touch a metal object that's surrounded by air cooler than your body, the object quickly conducts heat away from your fingertips, which makes them feel cold. The sensation travels to your brain, which perceives that the metal object is cold. If you hold a small metal object, like a penny, in your hand for a long time, it will absorb enough of your body heat to feel as warm as you are. The opposite is also true. If you touch the hood of a car that's been sitting in a sunny driveway on a warm day, the metal will conduct heat to your fingertips, and the hood will feel hot to you.
How many different kinds of insects are there?
More than 980,000 species of arthropods exist, and most of those are insects. Estimates vary, but some scientists believe there are around 900,000 known species of insects. And many more species are yet to be discovered. Some experts believe there may be as many as 10 million different kinds of insects.
What starts a sneeze?
Anything that irritates the lining of your nose can start a sneeze. A cold or infection can irritate the inside of your nose, as can things that are breathed in like dust and pollen. The fine hairs that line your nose are connected to nerve endings, and when they send a message to your brain that something is there that shouldn't be, your brain tells certain muscles to get rid of it. Your throat closes while air pressure builds up in your lungs. When the air is suddenly let go, it blows dust or germs or other things from your nose. During a powerful sneeze, air can exit your lungs at around 100 miles, 161 kilometers, per hour.
How does my body know to wake up when morning comes?
Parts in the center of your brain, the thalamus and hypothalamus, control your body's sleep-wake cycle. These parts act like an internal alarm clock. Sunlight is what sets the alarm off and keeps your body on a 24-hour schedule. Like Earth, resetting your internal clock every day. If you didn't have to follow a busy schedule that sometimes required you to get up before sunrise, and if there were no artificial lights at night to extend your day past sunset, your body clock would follow the cycle of the sun even more closely than it does now.
Why do cats purr?
It is generally believed that cats purr to show contentment, but no one knows for sure. Cats are born with the ability to purr. Kittens make the tiny rumbling sounds when they are nursing. Scientists think that purring starts out as a form of communication between a mother cat and her kittens. The purrs let the mother cat know that her babies are happy and feeding well. And she may purr back in response. Later, cats continue to purr when they are in a contented mood or as a friendly greeting. But scientists aren't exactly sure how cats purr. Many think that it comes from the vibration of blood in a large vein in a cat's chest, caused when surrounding muscles repeatedly squeeze and release the blood vessel. Air in a cat's lungs and windpipe increase the sound of the vibrations so that it can be heard. Though sometimes the purring of a cat is silent and can only be felt. Other scientists think that cats purr when membranes called false vocal cords, located in a cat's throat near the real ones, start to vibrate.
How do spiders spin webs?
Not all spiders spin webs, but most do. The webs can be spun into many different shapes, and they are used to protect eggs, catch insects for food, or move a spider through the air. Most spiders possess 3 pairs of tube-like spinnerets near the ends of their bodies that produce a fluid that hardens as it is drawn out into silky threads. Spider webs look delicate, but they are actually very strong. When compared with an equal amount of steel, spider silk is 5 times stronger. Spider webs do not last long. They are damaged by the capture of prey or by weather conditions. And some webs simply dry out after a day or two. Some spiders need to spin a new web every day, a task that can take about an hour. Rather than spin a web, certain spiders spin a silk tube with a trapdoor at one end. They hide in the tube until they feel the vibrations of a passing insect. Then they dart out and capture their meal.
Why do we hear ocean sounds when we hold shells up to our ears?
Many of us have held a large shell, usually a conch, pronounced conch, up to our ears and heard what sounds like waves crashing against the shore. The magical part is that you can be miles from the ocean and still hear that sound.
If you want people to be nice to you, and who doesn't?
Then it is wise to be nice to them. Courteous, kind behavior not only makes the people you're dealing with feel good, it can make you feel good too. You've probably noticed that being nice is contagious, spreading good feelings to lots of people. Not only that, but you'll find you get what you want a lot more often when you're behaving pleasantly than if you're whining or ordering people around. Imagine if each person made the effort to be more respectful and thoughtful. The whole world would run a lot more smoothly.
Why do plants grow toward light?
A plant's ability to make food depends on its ability to absorb enough light energy. So, many plants move in the small ways that they can toward the sun or other light sources. A characteristic known as phototroism. Some plants hold their leaves flat and open during the day to catch as many of the sun's rays as possible and close them at night. Other plants change the direction their leaves face throughout the day, following the path of the sun as it moves across the sky. When a plant grows in uneven sunlight with the light hitting just one side of the plant, let's say chemical messengers called hormones will cause more stems and leaves to grow on the lighted side so that the plant can gather enough of the sunlight it needs to make food. Phototroism explains why houseplants turn their leaves toward windows, growing into lopsided shapes unless they are rotated once in a while.
What makes popcorn pop?
Believe it or not, most hard popcorn kernels have tiny bits of water inside. When these kernels are heated, the water gradually expands and turns into steam. At a certain point, the increasing steam can no longer be contained inside each kernel and explodes through the hard coating, causing a pop. The steam also cooks the starchy material inside kernels, turning it into the fluffy stuff we know as popcorn.
How do penguins keep their eggs warm?
Some penguins lay their eggs in nests like other birds. The emperor and king penguins, however, have an unusual method of keeping their eggs warm. While the female makes a long trek from the penguin colony to the water in search of food, the male places the egg on top of his feet, where it can nestle up against his warm body. For this entire incubation period, the male penguin carefully balances the egg on his feet, living off stored fat while he is unable to go find food. When a storm hits, all of the male penguins huddle together into a circle to provide some protection from high winds. After the egg hatches, the parent must continue holding it on its feet because the baby doesn't have enough insulating feathers, or down, to keep it warm on its own. When it's old enough, the baby penguin joins a large group of other babies. A few adults stand guard over the little ones while their parents seek food. When the parents return to the colony, they call to their chick. The parents can recognize their baby among the dozens of others by its appearance and its distinctive voice.
Are worms insects?
While some insects are worm-like in their immature, or larval, stage, The invertebrate creatures classified as worms are not insects. There are many different types of worms. In the earthworm category alone, there are thousands of species. Earthworms are very beneficial little animals. They are part of the diets of a huge variety of birds and other animals. And they also help keep the soil they live in healthy and nutritious for plants. The tiny tunnels created when worms burrow into dirt, they're actually eating the dirt as they go. Help the roots of plants get more nutrients, air, and water. Even the worm's manure, called worm castings, is beneficial. It's a great fertilizer. Earthworms are hermaphroditic, meaning that each worm has both male and female sex organs. A single worm is not capable of reproduction. However, each worm still needs a partner in order to get its eggs fertilized. While earthworms cannot actually hear or see, they can pick up vibrations and can sense light. The species of earthworm most common in the United States is rather small. These usually grow to be about 10 inches, 25 centimeters, long. There is a species found in Australia, however, that can be as long as 11 feet, 3.3 meters.
How does male get from one place to another?
Once you mail a letter, a complex process that requires the efforts of many people and machines sometimes located in different parts of the world begins. Perhaps you put your letter into one of the mailboxes found at various locations in your community. These conveniently located boxes mean you don't have to make a trip to the post office each time you want to mail a letter. Mailboxes are visited by mail carriers a few times each day to pick up their contents. The mail collected by carriers is taken to a local postal sorting office, where it joins all the other letters that have been mailed in the area that day. High-speed machines take over then, preparing your letter to reach its destination. Mail is dumped onto a moving conveyor belt that brings it to a machine that separates it by size. Another machine checks to make sure that all the mail is properly stamped. And then it cancels, or prints over, the stamps so that they can't be used again. A postmark is also printed on each envelope, which tells the time, date, and place from which the letters have been mailed. A machine reads the zip codes written in the addresses of letters, which tell exactly to which part of the country or the world they are headed. Postal services around the globe work together to distribute mail and most have similar code systems. Postal workers process by hand the letters that have missing or unreadable zip codes. The zip code machine prints a barcode, a machine-readable series of lines, more reliable than written numerals on each letter, and a second sorting machine reads and separates them by destination. Mail is grouped by city and country. Local mail is prepared for delivery the next day. Other mail travels by truck, express train, or plane, depending on where it is going. Once mail travels close to its destination, it is unloaded at another postal sorting office. A barcode reading machine scans the letters again, separating them further for delivery to districts, neighborhoods, and streets. The letters are sent to local post offices, where carriers are given the mail for their delivery areas. Routes may include homes, shops, and office buildings. Carriers who work in farm country where people live very far apart may have to travel many miles to deliver the mail each day.
Why do plants sometimes wilt in the sun?
In order to take in and get rid of the gases carbon dioxide and oxygen involved in food production, plants have thousands of microscopic openings called stomata on their leaves and stems. Most of the stomata are located on the underside of leaves. A leaf on a cucumber plant has 60,000 stomata in just over 1/10 of a square inch. 1 square centimeter. Water that circulates throughout a plant escapes through these many openings in a process called transpiration. Usually a plant takes up more water through its roots than it loses through its leaves, and it is able to keep its firm shape. But on a hot, dry, or windy day, a plant can lose a lot of water through its leaves at a much faster rate than it can take it in. On such days, wilting can occur. Water pressure in plant cells helps give plants their form. Without that pressure, the cells shrink, causing a plant to wilt. At night, when there is no sunlight for photosynthesis, the stomata on plants are closed by special guard cells that surround their openings. Little transpiration occurs then, and a plant can refill its supply of water through its roots. Water pressure will return to normal in plant cells, then, along with the normal shape and appearance of the plant.